Ladies of Reddit, what are your best never wrap your vagina around crazy stories? It seems there have been multiple threads centered around the never stick your dick in crazy saying, as if there are all these insane women and all men are normal. Well, let's change that. Trigger warning, not safe for work. We want to remind you that these stories are meant for entertainment purposes only, and we do not endorse or condone any of the behavior described in them. In college, I was dumped by my boyfriend of 2 years. Soon after, out of the blue, a very attractive guy walked right up to me and asked me out. He was a little intense about it. I was upset about being dumped, so I accepted. Things seemed okay at first, and we eventually slept together. That's when things got weird. The morning after we slept together, I heard him get up and move around my room. He was making a lot of noise, but I assumed he was just getting ready since I knew he had an early class that day. I was tired, so I called out goodbye and continued sleeping. When I woke up and started getting ready myself, I found that he has stashed all these tiny photos of himself throughout the room. Many of them were sports-themed, like very posed photos of him playing tennis and also wrestling. I found them buried in the dresser, inside my shoes, lodged under a potted plant, and even found one in the bathroom I shared with my roommates. I emailed him asking what the f*** is with all these photos. He called back and angrily told me to take the red pill, as in the red pill from the movie The Matrix. I asked, "What do you mean?" And he couldn't explain himself. I had quite a time getting rid of him, but this was the strangest encounter. I went out with this guy a few times, and it was really casual. We grabbed drinks one night, lunch another day, and I eventually invited him over to watch a football game we were both interested in. He came over, I sat down and had one sip of beer before he grabbed the back of my head and pulled it toward his crotch. I laughed awkwardly and moved away, thinking he was making some kind of crazy joke. He then proceeded to beg me to go down on him. I tried to reason with him and say that was a little forward when we hadn't kissed or anything yet. Then I realized I was trying to convince someone I hardly knew why I shouldn't have to suck their dick. He got up, flipped my coffee table, and screamed at me for being a tease. He mumbled something about all being the same before heading out the door. I went after him, just wanted to watch the crazy unfold, I guess, and when he got to the bottom of the stairs of my apartment, he screamed, "If you weren't going my why did you even invite me over?" It was not night. It was late afternoon, college football, and many of my neighbors were outside with their kids. I have not made friends with my neighbors since then. I dated this guy while I was in high school who seemed okay. He had a strange fashion sense, but he was always funny, nice, and treated me well. For a while, our relationship was pretty normal. My family loved him, and he spent a ton of time at my house, even when I wasn't around. Then, over the summer, we went on vacation to Las Vegas for 2 weeks, and got weird. He called me every day in the hotel, which wasn't that strange at first. I thought he just missed me. But when I got back, he had carved my name into his stomach in big letters and cut himself over 100 times across his body. Apparently, he also called my best friend, who he hadn't hung out with before, and told her since they both missed me, they should hang out. And by hang out, he meant go and find drugs to do to drown out the pain. As we dated, his behavior became pretty erratic, like showing up at my house at all hours of the night, trying to get me to shoot up heroin, calling my house at 2 a.m. just to listen to my voice, telling me if I didn't stay with him that he'd OD on purpose. Just so much stuff. It got to a point where I couldn't take it and we broke up. Eventually, his mom decided to get him help. But when she tried, he crawled onto his roof and would not come down. So I had to go over there, coax him off the roof, drive with her 2.5 hours away to drop him off at a hospital, and then drive back with his crying mother who was at the end of her rope. After a few months, he tried to get back with me, but he was so high on heroin when he came over that he called me another girl's name while hugging me. Following all this, he moved out of state to live with said girl and her parents, promptly stole a few $1,000s from them, and ended up getting kicked out. He still pops up occasionally and has even contacted my boyfriends at the time. He will usually tell them to treat me right and talk about how I deserve the world and beautiful children. One time I unblocked him on FB to show someone what he was up to, and within minutes he had sent me a friend request. He's not as bad as some of the guys in this thread, but he was still pretty crazy. I had a fling with this guy, about 28. He was the most amazing dancer and really into the club scene, which I have never been into, and he was really into me really quickly, which for various reasons wasn't going to happen. He didn't drink, but we took ecstasy together a bunch and generally had a good time. Whenever we had sex, he made me feel like a goddess. It was like he'd never been properly fucked before. Despite him being the guy at the clubs that would literally have a crowd of people around him watching him dance. After about a 6-week fling, during which I was increasingly staying over at his apartment, having sex all night and then driving back to my place in the wee hours in time to get ready for work, he told me that not only is he married with 4 kids, but a very devout Mormon. He was working in my city while his family stayed in Idaho because it was just a temporary IT contract. I honestly never suspected a thing. Not me, but my mother. She dated a guy for about 2 years. He was funny and nice, took my mom to all kinds of places. She was definitely in love with him. He worked for HP in Boise. The only strange thing was that whenever she asked him about his past, he would shut down. He told her his whole family was killed in a car accident. They broke up and got back together a number of times because she intuitively felt she couldn't trust him, but he always convinced her she was just being unreasonable. At some point, my grandma was browsing around the America's Most Wanted website and saw a guy who looked really similar. She called my mom, and my mom knew immediately. Called the cops, and he was arrested at HP the next day. Turns out he sexually abused his daughter in California for years. She's now permanently committed to a mental hospital. When the police were finally notified, he took his boat out into the ocean, cut himself and spattered blood everywhere, then jumped off the boat and swam to shore, effectively faking his own death. The police weren't convinced, and obviously never found his body, so they'd been looking for him since then. He moved to Idaho and assumed a fake identity. When he was arrested, he called my mom and asked her to be a character witness for him. She obviously declined. To top things off, my mom ended up being on America's Most Wanted, where they told the whole story in dramatic detail, complete with bad reenactments. F***ing crazy time, that was. I guess the conclusion is that when guys are crazy, it is far worse than when girls are. Who are these men, and why are they allowed to live in society? If you have any stories of your own, feel free to share them in the comments below. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep exploring the weird and wonderful world of Reddit.